with everything that we know today, if you work with animals, this is not an option. Behavioral management is not an added extra. It is not a fluffy add-on. It is essentially one of the. So at our facility, we consider our behavioral program just as important as giving food and water every day.
Mate, I 100% agree with you.
So I was thinking, we have all worked with lots of different species. Some of the ones that I've worked with have been largely display animals. What is an animal that you have worked with or that you would like to work with that you think hasn't fully seen its training potential yet? So my example is echidnas. I loved working with them. They were so much more impressive than I ever gave them credit for. Usually you unfortunately see them on the side of the road, or they're just kind of spiky bit.
It's a bit of a morbid way to start off.
Well, yeah, or they're just kind of a spiky thing down in the ground. But once I worked with them, I realised how impressive they are with their adaptations to the environment, how intelligent they are, how motivated for food they can be. And unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to kind of really explore that, but I think you could get some really cool operant conditioning going with an echidna.
So,
not the only thing quite impressive about an echidna either.
That is true.
Two-part question. Do you? Yeah, I know it's an interesting appendage. Do you want me to talk about an echidna training session that I literally watched yesterday, or should I come up with my species? Because I actually don't have a species prepped. I haven't thought of one.
No, that's all right. Tell me about this echidna because I'm fascinated, and then you can.
So I'll set the scene. So the echidna, his name is Elvis. He's 28 years old. Up until 6 months ago, he had never had any intentional training and conditioning. And his trainer now is a young chap by the name of Ollie. And when I met him, he had very loosely started to get Elvis conditioned to him, just offering him some food from a small dish.
Yep.
And Ollie rapid fired a couple of questions to me about, a recall, a marker, and reinforcement schedules. And it was just pretty much a passing conversation that I didn't really give much thought to. It wasn't even an official consult section. He was like, hey, what would you do about this? Blah, 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 blah. Make sure your cues are super clear and novel. Make sure your markers are sharp and make sure your reinforcement can be delivered in a way the animal, spots it. He goes, no worries, Ryan. What he came up with was so ridiculously specific and novel and unique, and the criteria was so well mapped out that it's the best demonstration of an animal who fully 100% understands that I almost think I've ever seen. Because I went into the exhibit yesterday, echidnas passed out doing the echidna thing under the soil. You just see the little rocks.
Yep.
We go in, Ollie sets up all his gear for training. Animal doesn't move. Not so much as a recognition that
and then at this point you're going, all right, how long are we going to be here for?
Shit, this is going to be a long slog with a 28-year-old echidna, right? They live to 30, right? So he crouches down, he's got his Rio ready, got his clicker, he checks his target pole, gets all his gear laid out. I love it, just so anal retentive. And then puts down his phone, which he has a very specific app with a metronome on it that he sets it specifically the most novel sounding number of beats per minute, which I think is 121 beats per minute that he uses for every single session, never varies it, gets all set, then hits play. The friggin' second his finger hits the play button, the echidna goes, I'm awake, and he hears the metronome go, and the echidna goes, okay, I hear the sound, it's novel, it's nuanced, it's in that direction, and just beelines at echidna speed, straight over to him.
D-lines.
D-lines, yeah. And then click, metronome off, delivers the reinforcement, and then, presents a target. And the echidna goes, he says, target. Echidna looks up, bang, hits the target. And he's got that. And then his only other behaviour, I shouldn't say only other behaviour, the other behaviour that he's taught him, which I don't even know how he got to it so quickly, but is a voluntary sort of lift restraint. So he targets him into an area where he has his hands ready to go, and the echidna comes in and stops in between his hands, and then he goes lifting, and the echidna goes, like gets himself ready, and he picks him up, and then, does his full body inspections and whatnot, puts him back down, clicks, pays, says finish, and the echidna goes back and goes just straight down on the ground. Like it's so epic and refreshing to see a species like that where it's not it's not flashy or dynamic looking.
Yeah.
But unlike, say, a lot of the fish and sharks and whatnot, and even dogs that I work with, where everything kind of looks manic, and probably to the new eye or the untrained eye, to watch an eagle ray learn, you're just like, did they just stumble across that target, or a spaniel find target odors? Like, they just look like they were just running around, and then you're just clicking and throwing treats, right? Which obviously there's a lot more going on than that, but the coolest thing about the echidna is it's undeniable. Like, there is no action, zero, doesn't give a shit, and then the cue starts, and it's like, I get up and I move in that direction at 1 meter per second, and not even that speed.
Love it. Thank you, Ollie. I'm looking forward to coming and seeing.
So he's my
Elvis. You said
Elvis is the
legendary
animal, and absolute, just phenomenal work. Animal is totally engaged in it, fully switches on, fully commits, and then after it you can see his little echidna brain's like, oh, that was a lot of learning. I'm just going to go and have a nap in the sun right now.
It's funny, the most ideally simple behaviours with those species are the things that impress the pants off.
Yeah.
Quite experienced trainers.
Well, and I think it's the detail, hey? Like, it's if someone sort of is a bit sloppy, or the animal's already flying over and offering behaviours, you're like, but the fact that the animal totally understands the window of opportunity and is so relaxed and almost like oblivious to everything else until...
Not like there's all of those precursors. He's like, nope,
doesn't give a shit about all the precursors to the session. He's like, no, that's not my cue. You guys can come and go a million times. You can put food on the ground. He didn't care.
Yeah.
But it's like, as soon as he heard that, it's like, it's undeniable when someone said, I've opened up a dialogue with this animal.
Yeah.
And the animal fully understands the dialogue and the terms of conditions of the session. So and mate, so to almost go full circle back to you, that's a 28-year-old animal with a guy who I'm pretty sure this is the first behavior he's ever trained. He's brilliant and probably landed himself with an animal that suits his personality and style of training.
Yeah.
But imagine a guy like Ollie with 5 echidnas in 5 years' time.
All on their little stations.
What could you come up with? I mean, unreal, hey?
Full circus act.
Yeah. flaming hoops with echidnas, riding skateboards and ollieing through them.
But literally,
what could you get to, hey?
an echidna riding a skateboard, I don't think would be that difficult.
No, I
all of their adaptions, their abilities,
low center of gravity. It's like those really attractive bulldogs in all those skating videos out of San Francisco. Like, it's
they can climb, they can swim, they can manipulate things really well.
They're very, very intelligent.
Get it to solve a Rubik's Cube.
Rubik's Cube.
Roll with it.
I don't know if they're what their eyesight's like, but anyway, so I reckon heaps is possible with echidnas. That's the most impressive training I've seen with one thus far, and like Dino said, it's simple, but the criteria is so beautiful and undeniable that it's not that simple.
Yeah, and it just lets you kind of think what is possible. That's awesome.
Good job, Ollie.
Yeah, good work, Ollie and Elvis. I don't have a species that has popped in my mind yet, but you probably do.
My brain goes to be honest, everything in terms of potential.
Yeah, and to be fair, you're kind of exploring training just about everything at your zoo anyway.
But I think overarching is reptiles for me. I think there's so much in that space that not only that we can look at, that we probably need to look at in terms of welfare practices and, probably breaking the mold. And I think we have in some areas, and I think we're still a little bit behind the magic 8 ball with some of it.
Is there any particular species or, groups that you have already worked with that you've started to see some opening of doors more so than others?
Yeah.
I've got some ideas in my head. But
you've been able to train some crocs and some big monitors, and they're fun, they're hard hitting, they're switched on. They're, and again, it's always down to knowing your taxa and knowing your species and what your limitations are. We've had some really cool convos and even a chapter in the book about the learning experiences needed from a reptile compared to other species. Like Steve and I were talking, the voluntary blood draw we trained on our 4 meter croc, realistically from, him not loving the needle touch, he was quite reactive to it, to drawing blood was 5 repetitions.
Yeah.
Over 5 or 6 weeks, 1 repetition a week. But in training a voluntary blood on a primate, we might be doing 5 or 6 repetitions in one session.
Yeah.
And then we still may not be getting that blood
kind of progress. Yeah.
for weeks.
It means each reinforcement event for a reptile, I would argue, or for most of them anyway, means so much more than it would for, say, a primate or even a canine or another sort of apex predator that would, eat on the fly regularly. We've spoken about this with crocs. When a croc gets its feed, it hasn't just associated what's happened in the last 3 to 10 seconds before that food. It's thinking about probably the hours prior, what were all the precursors to that event. We know they study people, they study animals, and they look for habits and behaviours. They learn a lot more.
Do you find as a result you're a lot more intentional about all of that preparation that goes into that one session that you're going to do, because you're thinking, this is one of 5 steps. You probably weren't thinking it'll be the 5th one where you get blood necessarily when you started out, but I guess if you're going into a session with a sea lion or a dog and you go, all right, I'm going to have a bit of a play with this today, and you start kind of toying around with touching things.
That's a good point. You can't do that as well. I'm not saying you can't, but it's a difficult thing to do. With
like you said, you might have 5 repetitions in that one session, and 3 of them might have been a bit sloppy, but you kind of can work through that and get somewhere. Whereas with your croc, if you're thinking, well, we have this one session this week.
I think it was the first time I'd trained a voluntary blood with a croc, and to be honest, there's not a lot of data on or processes on it. So I guess for me, doing that process and a learning process, I was probably able to jump a lot of approximations as I went, to go, okay, I can't think of you as if, I'm training another animal to do this behavior. Not that I was skipping them. I was reading behavior. I was reading that animal.
I was going to say there's a caveat to that, because you were reading in the moment going, due to the body language of the animal, we're happy to play ball. We're not, overstepping the mark or taking too much cash out of the bank.
Correct. Yeah. Even things down to how is the animal approaching this session? Because, he was asked to come out of the water and go into another section. He's hitting it hard. He's out. He knows. Yeah, great. To me, he's showing. No, I'm keen to. I know what's about to happen. Yeah. Or I have a fair idea what's about to happen in here, and I'm giving that consent. Yeah, I'm coming. Yeah. There was never any point did he start to go, oh, I'm holding back a bit here. I'm not too keen on this. Or as much as we know with those experiences, they'll generalize things. So, if every time he's coming out going to this area, we're making that predictable for this learning pattern. Yeah. Which is why that's what crocodiles learn great in. They learn well in predictability. Yeah. Predictability will be our biggest enemy in so many other areas. Like with elephants, we try to avoid predictability to the nth degree. But to train a crocodile, predictability was my friend, because it was a way that I could also create, I guess, that dialogue with them going, hey, coming here, this is going to happen. And he was like, I'm coming.
And I think on that sort of topic of predictability, a tangent, but it works, and it came up yesterday. I think if you have a species that perhaps you haven't fully understood yet, or that there's not much data on it, or even if it's a new dog or something, right? If you aren't getting progress in something and you want to understand if the animal enjoys it and wants to participate in those sessions, I think being as predictable and routine as possible is a really good way to go, oh yeah, no, they do understand, because every day at 9:05 I stand here and I call them over and we attempt to do a blood training session. If after a week of those sessions at 9:05 the animal's sitting on the other side of the yard, you go, yeah, maybe your blood sessions are dog shit.
Yeah.
You need to review it. Or they're now at 9:03, they're standing there waiting. You go, oh wow, they're learning, they're getting it, and then maybe you can layer in some variability.
Well, it's like even just when you're training a behavior, we start training a behavior using a continual schedule of reinforcement.
Yeah.
And then
Such a
why? Because it's predictable.
Yes.
And that's going to help you learn. And then we start to transition that to a variable schedule.
There is a major, probably almost a whole chat in that thing about the misunderstandings around routine versus consistency and when those things are good. Like I remember I got taken a task a long time ago about when working with anxious animals, how I was saying I try and avoid routine. And someone's like, but that's the worst thing you can do for an anxious animal. I'm like, yeah, okay, I should say the caveat is I try and build resilience and make them resilient towards a changing routine. But if they are a complete anxious ball of mess, you kind of do need for some period of time to maintain routine. It's like it can be a delicate balancing act of going, let's be really routine for a while to give the animal some sense of, predictability in life, and then go, okay, now I'm going to start to expose you to 5-minute windows of variation and more food in the early half of the day and less food in the latter half of the day and all those kind of things. But it's an easy trap, I think, though.
Yeah.
To get stuck in routine. And that sucks.
To be honest, potentially the reason why that animal is the way it is because of
routine.
Predictable routine.
Yeah.
In so many aspects of its life.
So I know you're a passionate reptile keeper. What's your, if you were to say one thing with your average zoo exhibited python, how would you like to see a training program implemented to improve their welfare? What do you think the things are?
Snakes is a good one. I want to open that one up too.
Yeah, I mean, I think having a look. So, say for me, I own olive pythons. I've had pet olive pythons for many, many years. Very passionate about them. They're big, potentially dangerous snakes. Mine are about 4 meters long, weigh about 18 kilos. For us at our zoo, they're considered a dangerous animal at that size and require two people.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, just potentially. I mean, also based on their personality. One of mine is, completely. You can open the door and stick your hand in and pat her on the head, and she'd never bite you. But I guess having programs around safety with them as well. So for me, is exactly what I do. I have a set routine of feeding time.
Yeah.
So I will never clean a habitat, between 6 o'clock, from 6 o'clock onwards at night, because when I do feed, they know that that's the time that I feed. Yeah. And I set that experience up way in advance. So I'll have their food either defrosted or defrosting for about an hour to 2 hours prior to in the middle of the room. They know what that white bucket is.
And there's olfactory cues.
Correct. Why? Because it's what snakes are built for. Yeah. So that whole process starts probably, and it's an easy process to start, starts a couple of hours prior, and then double tapping the glass with the feed tongs they know or that we're on. Yeah. Whereas with that animal, I can open her. And mind you, I say she's placid as anything. She will launch and destroy whatever then goes into that.
Yeah, in that moment.
In that moment.
You accidentally stick your face in there, you're getting a face full of
where is
python.
she? No. Yeah. However, at the same token, any other time, if I just open that door, she will be like...
It's a different set of cues.
Yeah, I can reach my hand in, I can pat her, I can pull her out, I can do whatever I want. Obviously there are more times that I'm going to clean, all of those sorts of things. And that's just me working with her in her natural state to make it safer for me.
Leaning into her natural history. Can I ask you, so I know you do some sunning work and whatnot, and this is something I was experimenting with maybe a year ago, where we were trying to, this is assuming that pythons enjoy sunning, or that it may be reinforcing, but we had some that were kept predominantly indoors, and then we wanted to give them sort of agency over whether they stayed in the habitat where they were or they came out. So we had 2 different buckets, and then so when we would do like a handling or inspections daily or every second day, that we would then essentially present the 2 buckets. One, is this colour with this kind of lid and whatnot, very visually and in every way possible,
Trying to give some cues.
right? And then the other one's, very, very boring and blank. One means you're going to go outside and sun. The other one means we're just going to put you to the side and then put you back in the exhibit after we do our servicing. Didn't get enough data yet by any means to decide whether that works. I mean, do we think, though, association events like that could occur with snakes? I think, like, obviously a lower hanging fruit would be to say one bucket means you're going to get fed, the other one means you're not going to get fed, and measure it. And I feel like I kind of know what the results are, right? I feel like they just go, when I'm hungry, I'm going to go into the green bucket, for example. What do you reckon for something like that, for sunning or social experiences with other snakes, for some of the stuff you've done with the Ellies, where you say, do you want to go out with your brother? Do you want to go in the snake? Do you want to go in with the sun? Do you think I'm reaching too far to try and ask those kind of questions with a snake and have that dialogue?
I don't think I've started with mine. So I have a period of the day in the room that they're in where the sun comes in beautifully.
Yeah.
I would say that they enjoy that because they will often leave their sunning spot under heat, artificial heat, and they'll go lie up against where the sun is coming into the habitat. It only hits certain parts depending on the time of year. So trialing things like I'm going to open the door, have a table sitting there so they just come straight out onto the table. The table is warmed by the sun. If they come out onto that table, I'm going to pick them up and take them outside into the sun.
Sick.
So if they don't come out onto that table, then you stay inside. For me, it's a little bit of a so far nowhere near enough data or anything like that to say how it's working. I don't know if they quite understand it all yet. However, to me, there's also that catch-22 in the fact that, well, I know biologically natural sunlight is so important for them. So at some points I'm going to just grab you and put you out in the sun
and that's
because
kind of my rationale too.
I know it's going to be beneficial for you. Even sometimes out in the rain, oh my God, the Olivers, when you put them out in the rain, they stop, they put their head up, they, all weather events I think is really important, especially if they have that opportunity to go back to heat. Obviously, if they don't, that's not ideal. You shouldn't be keeping a reptile. But yeah, I think there is a way to go, hey, do you want to go here? Or it's that learning event. They know that if I come out to here, that eventually
if it's predictable enough and there's enough repetitions, they should give you some agency. Yeah, I think what I'd like to keep up the chats about with you and maybe other reptile keepers is identifying things which we can say with a high degree of certainty other than food, things that are reinforcing, and then start to actually give the animals some choice or some agency around that and go, no, we can actually prove that they do want to be out in natural light. They do want more space, or they do want social companions, because with all that elapids and stuff that, we know in milking rooms and whatnot, I have issues with the current welfare around a lot of the facilities around the world, not just in Australia, but where I think people are making some pretty gross assumptions about how reptiles want to be housed 24/7, and even some of our fish species too. People are like, it's an ambush predator. It only needs a small tank. And it's like, but maybe if we could open up a dialogue and ask these animals, do you want more space? Do you want natural sunlight? Do you want social companions? That we might see some answers that open up some hard truths for everyone.
And I think too, just looking at, things like excuses, for lack of a better term, that probably have been around.
Convenient truths.
Yeah. So, things like, which we've already spoken through, the croc only eats once a week or whatever, once a fortnight. That's not enough repetitions. We know that that's not true. That, we have so many snakes, we don't have time to do that. Well, maybe there's definitely stamp collecting in reptiles. So maybe ask yourself, why do you have 20 corn snakes? Like, is that really... if you can't apply those better welfare practices to those animals due to the number of animals you have, well, there's your answer to your question.
Yeah. And as well, once we start to get this data together, it's not going to apply to a whole species. Like, we've worked with multiple seals, multiple dolphins, multiple people, multiple dogs, and across that same species...
Yeah,
they're all different. It's like some like to be out there with everyone, some like to be in the corner by themselves. So
That's good though. I enjoy the chat. Thanks, gents.
All right, I'm going to chat about someone from the history of animal training who's still floating about the place.
Floating?
So this
In a
is someone who could be considered one of the grandfathers of modern animal training practices. Ryan and I have had the privilege of meeting Dr. Bob Bailey at Taronga Zoo many years ago. He came in. Have you ever met Bob Bailey? No. I was a pretty fresh-faced newbie trainer at the time when he came in, so I really didn't have any idea who this kind of nerdy old man was. But the little session that we had with him where he kind of ran through some of his greatest hits just blew me away with his knowledge and his experience and the kind of character of the guy that he is. So from his own website, he says, I describe myself as a behavioural systems analyst and engineer, small businessman, field biologist, animal trainer and teacher, not necessarily in that order. So from that, I take 2 points. One, he's a massive nerd.
Yeah.
And two,
words.
Two, he's incredibly humble about his own achievements. So as we kind of will break down some of what he's done, the way he describes himself is pretty basic compared to
how you could.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, we
how
see some
I
other
would
people in the
describe
field
Yeah,
kind
I was
of
about to
big
say
upping
that.
their mild achievements.
Yeah. I've trained everything.
Yeah. So he goes on to describe his rather idyllic 1940s Southern California childhood, with lots of time spent along the coast, both in the ocean and the desert, finding, observing and photographing animals. Early on, right from the early stages, he was particularly intrigued by animal behaviour, just watching them, quote, what animals do. Bob studied biology and chemistry at UCLA and worked as a teaching and research assistant, formalising his study of animals there. This led him to start training both captive squid, amphibians, fishes and reptiles, and also wild crows, coyotes and kangaroo rats.
What epic species to cut your teeth on, hey?
Yeah.
And this is a theme.
A dolphin. Ugh,
you know,
easy.
Yeah, I know. Hey?
straight off what we were just talking about, like some of those creatures that people don't even think about.
Yeah, that's what he's cutting his teeth on. That explains a bit.
Doesn't it just?
Yeah.
So he was largely self-taught, but studied works from the likes of Skinner,
Yeah.
and Keller and Marion Breland.
Did you mention Premack?
I'm afraid to say.
Ding,
ding, ding.
Yeah, hasn't.
Remember Premack counter?
Ryan loves Premack if anyone hasn't figured that one out. I saw a picture of him the other day.
Yeah, he's
I
a good
knew
sort.
you had daddy issues, but I did not know they ran that deep.
It's a bit early for that kind of chat, Dean.
Does your wife know how much you love Premack?
She does.
Great.
Pictures of
She's
him
been
in the bedroom.
called it a couple of times in the boudoir. Anyway.
So this all brought Bob to 1962 when he became the US Navy Marine Mammal Program's first director of training.
When 72.
62.
62, right, okay.
So,
It's an incredible program.
yes. And so I don't have a lot of information about it here, but it's definitely something.
It's been there. Or are you allowed to
Did
say
you have to
that?
sign it?
NDA?
Well, yeah, keep going.
So, it's definitely something I'd like to talk about more at some point. But, I only know bits and pieces of information about it, and I think that's by design. But anyway, so in this role, he was first formally introduced to the Brelans, who studied under Skinner, and their company Animal Behaviour Enterprises, or ABE. And so they taught the Navy trainers and Bob the basics of operant conditioning using chickens. So this is going to be a running theme. So significantly, this introduces Bob to his two great loves, Marion Breland, who he'd go on to marry after Keller died, and the training of chickens. He just loves training chickens.
Yeah.
So we also see Bob's character shine through. So again, quoting from his website, I believe it was a combination of the Brelands' communication skills and my training the chickens that opened my eyes to what real training was all about. So he's constantly crediting these other people with their amazing things, and even though he goes on to do some pretty incredible stuff and loves training the boring stuff, basically, what would largely be considered the boring stuff.
Probably chasing perfection, hey? Like it's...
Yeah, true. In 1964, the Navy successfully completed their first open ocean release of a dolphin, which was his greatest claim to fame at the time. In 1965, Bob left the Navy to work full-time with the Brelands at ABE. So ABE was the first company to use operant conditioning to train animals, routinely using clickers as early as 1944 to train the likes of dogs, cats and parakeets. They started their first animal training classes in 1947 using chickens.
Unreal.
Yeah, so they're like really at the forefront of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so this is a kind of a cool thing. So this was a truly commercial operation. They were making money from it, and just, unashamedly so. With the General Mills feed salesman being some of their first clients. So they taught them to train animals for public shows so they could sell their wares. They pioneered operant conditioning with dolphins as early as 1955, whales in 1957, and parrots also in 1957, and they wrote groundbreaking scientific journals on the topic. ABE had more than 43 full-time employees and business interests that were worldwide. Over the years, ABE behavioural technicians trained over 140 species and more than 15,000 individual animals, including ravens, vultures, pigeons, dogs, cats, dolphins, sea lions, and many other species to perform in difficult circumstances and in free environments.
Almost as many as Dean has.
Yeah. They trained thousands of animals representing over 120 different species. So I reckon Bob would have some thoughts on what animals can be trained.
Yeah.
But always declared the common backyard chicken to be their favourite teaching model.
Fun fact, in 1968, the first Kentucky Fried Chicken was actually an ex-Bob Bailey chicken.
Thought you were going to go somewhere serious.
How do you know it's not? No, I did.
So Karen Pryor, famous for not shooting dogs, lured Marion and Bob into teaching public classes, and Bob still travels and consults to this day. So that's, his corporate bio. There's a few key things that stood out to me, both from having met him years ago and reading about him. So one is his work was unashamedly commercial, and that's okay. I think it just led to some pretty incredible learnings and amazing stuff.
I wonder how much of heat he has, or whether he has got much heat from Peter. Surely they've...
Who's Pete?
Your mate,
Oh.
Peter.
I think, no doubt through the years. He just strikes me as someone who doesn't really care.
Maybe, I don't know.
So
Would
two,
he shit in the forest? Absolutely.
he knows how to utilise all types of training and where different approaches are necessary or appropriate. So this is something that wasn't in his bio, but somehow it came up when we were talking to him on his visit about, different approaches to things. And so he was talking about the good old days of before ethics. They used to go down to the docks and buy cratefuls of macaws, like straight out of the rainforest, and drive many hours back home with headphones, like earmuffs on, because they were all screeching in the back of the car. And I can't remember exactly what the first two stages, but it was basically saying they'd, put them all in aviaries and, start offering hands or treats to them or whatever. And so the first group of them would start to be conditioned that way, they'd just willingly participate. And then there'd be ones that'd end up in kind of smaller cages with a bit more like forceful in your face, and they'd manage to get some stepping up that way, right down to the stage where they'd put on welder's gloves and grip them and hold them until they finally kind of submitted and
learn
helplessness that way. So, obviously he wasn't kind of endorsing that, and he's
developed beyond that now.
I think right back from the start, he was using some of the most impressive, largely positive reinforcement operant conditioning out there, but he understands it and has applied it in all different things. And so I think that makes for a well-rounded trainer and probably teacher that they can communicate all of them. 3, he celebrates and has worked with all species and got incredible results. So right back to the start, training squid and things like that.
Sick.
That's epic. 4, he's incredibly collaborative and constantly credits the work of those around him. Which I think for someone who has achieved so much, I think that's something to...
But I almost feel like that's why those kind of people achieve so much, is because they're not caught up in their own hype. He's actually like a legitimate person who's pursuing that quest of knowledge and learning more. So instead of going, fuck, I'm so great, I've finished, I'm done, I am the ultimate trainer. He's
I am Bob Bailey.
Yeah, which he by all means could. You know?
Yeah, I mean, he's in his 80s or something now, and he was at a conference not that long ago in Australia. So
and like unreal speaker too. Like really engaging.
And that my final point was he's forgotten more than I'll ever know, including state secrets. So some of the stuff he was telling us about, and so training ravens for spy missions.
Yeah, to open drawers and stick steal secret documents
And-
from Fidel Castro and stuff like that.
Yeah, with like an order of priority. So they'd go in, and if there was something on the desk, take
Go
that.
that first, yeah.
And if there's nothing on the desk, check the desk
drawer,
drawers. And if there's not a desk, or if the desk is clear, look for a bureau off to the side and check the, like, incredible. And the other thing as well was they had ravens with cameras
Yeah.
that would fly up to windows and take photos, but they had to teach them.
Pacific Gulls.
Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
But whatever it was, they had to teach them not to touch the glass with the camera. So they had to make sure they weren't tapping because, somebody hears the tapping at the window and turns around.
There's a crow with a handy cam.
Was it him as well? He did the cats following people as well, because no one would think of cats.
right.
And like they had cats with spy cams and stuff on. When Bob came to the zoo, he came down to meet some animals, and it was. Do you remember? I brought out the first subantarctic fursuit I'd worked with, who was, by all accounts, a grumpy little
Who was that?
Franklin. And
I don't even remember Franklin.
What?
yeah, he was a funny little critter, orphan, washed up little, unusual critter. Anyway, I was doing some target work, moving him around through the sort of crowd area. Very young animal and a very young Ryan. And I asked him for a target, and it was pretty average. And when he was young, I did everything on a target pole because he was jabby and bitey. And he did a target, and I was like, that wasn't really a good target. And I'm like, right in front of the Bob Bailey. I'm like, come on, mate. Like, here's your criteria. I'm not helping you out. You've got to hit the criteria. And he's just gone whack and just bit me straight on the hand, like right in front of Bob Bailey. I was like, I felt like this big, like, you dickhead, Ryan. Like, I was just, wanted it to look so good, so bad. And the animal just goes, how about I bite you in front of one of your childhood heroes?
Thanks, Franklin.
Yep. Thanks, Bob Bailey. Thanks, Steve.
Oh,
Dean.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this topic I wanted to kind of get some thoughts on. It popped up recently in a animal training Facebook group. I'll call it that. Where there was an anonymous post, and basically this post was saying, am I the only one, or am I,
The asshole.
no, not at all. For not really caring too much or have that much interest in training. Obviously works as a keeper, saying, I'd much rather do things like feeding, cleaning, enrichment, all of those sorts of things, but I'm not really overly enthused with training, for paraphrasing or lack of a better thing. I skimmed through some comments, and there was people saying, there's some people at our facility who are the same, blah 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 blah.
Part of me goes, shut up, but the other part, but the other part goes, you got to admire a bit of honesty there.
Oh, absolutely,
which I think is good.
I think it's the broader attitude that's the question. If they literally go, we've got some great trainers at our facility, and I would rather do the grunt work so that they can focus on that, then
cool. Yeah,
I've got a job for you. Like that, that's great. But yes, if it's a broader attitude of, I think training's a waste of time, zookeeping's all about, making sure the windows are clean.
Yeah.
It certainly didn't say that, I don't think. I did read it a few weeks ago.
Well, you should assume they did, right? Let's paint him out to be a villain, because that doesn't make for an interesting podcast if we say everyone's lovely.
But yes, it's not the first time I've heard it. It's not the first time I think someone said it. And I think there's two points that I want to make with it, that where my sort of brain goes, and fucking who knows where that is.
The toilet.
Yeah, the first one is, with everything that we know today, if you work with animals, this is not an option. Behavioral management is not an added extra. It is not a fluffy add-on. It is essentially one of the. So at our facility, we consider our behavioural program just as important as giving food and water every day.
Mate, I 100% agree with you. Regardless if you work in the industry or not, if you've got pets, if you interact with animals, if you're so naive to think that you shouldn't have an understanding of how your behaviour modifies animals' behaviours, you're missing the point, really, of having a pet or interacting with animals. You must don't have to call yourself a trainer. You don't have to use jargon. But if you're going to work or live or cohabit around animals, have horses, have sheep, work in a zoo, you must know a bit about behavior, consequence, conditioning, reinforcement. Otherwise, you're missing the point.
Welfare's out of whack.
Totally.
Behavioral problems arise that probably didn't need to, based on, well, I mean, let's face it, the amount of times we all get asked to look at a behavioral problem, 99% of the time it's human error as to why it's occurring. Well, not necessarily error, but maybe human misunderstanding as to why it's occurring.
Can I say, though, if someone's listening to this and you're that person, or you've got a colleague or whatever that goes, training's a wank, or I'm not interested, I've been doing this for 30 years and I've never trained an animal and I won't, I just do my thing. Generally speaking, when I've met those people in workshops, when I've been called in to do consults and stuff, I love meeting those kind of people, and almost all of them now have become our greatest advocates, because if you can sit down with them, most people within that industry anyway, maybe not so much people like, say, in the livestock sector, I've had much greater difficulty working with some of those folks, but you sit down and you demonstrate your actions and you show what kind of results you can get, and you beg them to go through a small process with you, get them to identify a problem, and then go, okay, what's the biggest problem you're having with anything that you're working with? And then you go, let's just go through this process. We're not going to use clickers. We're not going to do anything too wanky or highbrow. And then they get through it and they see a result. I think those people end up being pretty bloody good allies for people like us.
And I think as well, like, those people inevitably have trained that animal many things, and a lot of it's good stuff. So if you can help them to realise that, we're just talking about your zookeeping in a different way and getting a bit more intentional about some of this stuff going forwards, that, might help to unlock that a little bit.
And I think that's kind of I think you're touching on it there, really, is that whether you like it or not, you have been training.
Yes.
If you're interacting with animals, you're training them and you're conditioning them things.
You might as well have a plan and do
it well.
Yeah, and do what you is going to be beneficial to you and the animal, because it's just going to be harder tomorrow if you don't.
And I think that's also an important thing to remind the enthusiastic young trainers, because it's so easy, like even when we were talking about training snakes before, it's so easy to get caught up on, well, here's my reinforcement, here's my planned training session, and forget everything that's happened around it. And when you went to describe around training snakes, it's all of those precursors, it's everything that comes before. It's the 2 hours of the food sitting out there before the session. And I think a lot of the time the people who are focused on their upcoming training session can get tunnel vision for that moment and not see all of the other stuff that they're doing that around.
Yeah.
The other thing that it makes me go to, and I've certainly been there many, many years ago, is I think sometimes for some people, when you start delving into training and, there's big words and there's this concept and this content, it gets a little overwhelming that, wow, there's so much to this. I don't know that. I will sit this bit out. I don't, which is where I think there's, I guess that's one reason why I'm kind of passionate about getting more of that info out there in lots of different ways that, we'll talk to the teams at work when we're doing a session, and, I'll just say, I just went and read a chapter in a textbook on differential reinforcement, and I was like, what? And then I'll read it in this textbook in a way that was easier for me to understand, and I went, I know that's okay, great. So I try to have different ways of explaining it to them, or putting them in a human example for them.
Yes, sometimes that helps.
Yeah, and again, treating them like an animal, finding out the best way that they're going to learn. And work to that is, I think, that's one of the reasons why I guess I'm a little bit passionate about getting more of that info out there in easier ways to digest and understand, to go, hey, you're already doing this. You probably just don't realize you're doing it.
It's like, I reckon, Michelle Shaw, the zoo nutritionist, her and I've had some awesome chats over the years, and it's been interesting to watch the nutrition space evolve in humans and in animals. And I think it's kind of the same where, you can't just put your blinkers on to nutrition or to behavior. You must have a basic fundamental understanding that there's certain things that your animal requires to live and to not die within their diet. But then you've got other people who are going to be able to tell you every amino acid and protein breakdown. And that's great. Like not everyone needs to know that, but you need to have a fundamental knowledge of nutrition to keep the animal in front of you alive. Cats aren't vegans, stuff like that. You need to understand that at a basic level. How funny that so many vegans get cats. Sorry, guys. I'm not meaning to fire shots, and that came from a deep, visceral place somewhere. But you know what I'm saying?
We'll unpack that one day with the daddy
don't
issue.
need to be able to recite, Pryor's laws on shaping or the hierarchy from Susan Friedman, but you need to understand the basics of, consequences are what drives behavior, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I don't think it's optional anymore.
No, not at all. Not at all. And that is
A long pause.
Yeah.
I was like, are you going to drop a truth bomb or are you just floundering?
No,
I was about to wrap you up, and I'm like, no, don't do it to him this time.
No, you can. Yeah, I'd love it if you'd wrap it up.
We've all read tons of resumes for people working within this industry. I have some personal preferences around things that are about professionalism, and I, come from a background of science, so I've been told from, previous supervisors and stuff that I would always give favoritism when reading resumes to people that sort of have a scientific approach to it. That's wrong. I'm not saying that's right, but there are certain things I would say to people that we hear time and time again, and feel free to jump in if you guys have any others. But the two that I would say, don't ever put these in your resume. Never say I've always been good with animals or dogs or whatever. Remove that. That's just, I don't know why. I'll think of a reason why.
I've had them since I was a kid.
Yeah, don't put that in there. And don't use the word passionate. Like, passionate is...
It's out. We're done with passionate.
We're done with passion.
Except for Dean today.
Well, I have passion pop written in mine, but favorite drink.
Yeah. So what I would suggest to people is focus on what you've actually done. So what things you have achieved. You can mention that you have certain animals in your possession if you want to, and mention your interests, your hobbies, your skills, and your strengths for sure. But just saying I've always been good, it gets us sort of back to how we talk about writing animal records or describing behavior and not anthropomorphizing. Like, tell me what you can see. Be objective with it. Don't be subjective and say, I'm a really passionate, enthusiastic guy that's always been good with animals. Like, that doesn't tell me anything. It's so subjective.
It's going to tell me that tells me about your ability to be objective in your work.
Stick to the facts. Tell me some of your home goals. And even the kids that have worked at Macca's for 5 years, or maybe done some degree or certificate for that, doesn't have anything to do with my industry. But what it does tell me is you got a bit of grit. You know, like you've stuck that out. You worked at Macca's or KFC for 3 years as a kid. Like, that's pretty impressive. That's a difficult job from a young person to maintain. So I think stick to the facts. Tell us what you've done, and then you can mention your interests and hobbies and stuff like that. But don't think that we want to hear that you're a whisperer and your auntie always told you that you're very good with her friggin' horse. Like, that's lame.
Yeah, I think there's obviously a lot of dog trainers on Instagram and things like that, and quite often you look at the way these people handle these dogs, and you go, what's this person's background? What's their system? And you go to their website and it'll say something along the lines of, Benny has developed his own approach to dog training after years and years. And when you look at that, and particularly if this is someone you're potentially going to employ, you go, okay, so then they're not willing to actually be taught anything.
Yeah.
They're not willing to learn from other people.
Or acknowledge the science. They've got their own system.
Exactly right. And so
these amazing people that have come before.
That's right. You go back to Dr. Bob Bailey, and all he does in his bio is talk about the incredible people that have influenced him. And so I think that's a bit, like you say, a red flag.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the resumes that I used to look at back in the zoo day was for volunteer applications and things like that. So a lot of those people, by their very nature, don't have a lot of industry experience. They're applying to get some industry experience.
And that's a bit of a flow over too, because I think a lot of people do. They've got their own websites or YouTube channels or LinkedIn profile or whatever. I think it's a flow over into that too, hey. You can say, you've been training animals since you're a kid.
Yes.
Sure, that's objective. I've been doing training sessions with dogs since I was 12 years old. Sure, that's objective. But saying, you know, I am Western Australia's premier intuitive horseman, you know, like it's like, what the hell does that mean? You know, like be honest with it.
Yeah, so I mean, when I was applying for work experience, I think I did lean pretty heavily upon the pets that I had at home and that kind of thing. But that went out the window once I could say that I've been volunteering at Taronga Zoo for X number of years, and I also am involved in this other volunteer program that, like you say, it's not an animal thing, but it shows my commitment to work. And I've got this other casual employer who can vouch for how committed I am, how polite I am to the to the customers. And
can I say as well, volunteer stuff? Like I want to hear about that.
Definitely.
People that volunteered at, you know, dog
Animal
clubs
shelters
or animal shelters or
Anything.
wires, anything like that. It's good. Here's another one, little controversial, but it tells me a lot about the person. And I have engaged these kind of people before though. Is ultra academics, right? So I've said this to people in interviews before when they go, I've done this, I've got a PhD, I've studied here, I've done that and that and that. That sort of stuff doesn't bode well if you're going for a shit kicking job.
No.
Because we
You're
look at,
overqualified.
you're going to be, we know you're going to be bored in that role. And so and we might go, okay, we'll run you in here for 3 months. We might have an opening in a research position or something much, much higher brow. But there is certainly something in that when you see someone, they've studied continuously for 9 years, you go, mate, you're not going to enjoy a job where you're running through the bush all day or you're literally picking up shit for 38 hours a week. Yeah. Not a red flag, but just an interesting one.
Mine is more of a holistic approach. Mine's red flags for unlucky people. So I will automatically, first day, I'll get a pile of resumes, I'll split it in half, and that half goes in the bin.
You do not.
Unfortunately, they were unlucky. These guys, luck. No, not at all. A couple of green flags for me, though, something that I will gravitate towards is someone that will put goals on their resume.
Cool. Yeah,
like
nice one.
I love dedicated people in this industry because, well, to me, none of our animals asked to be here. You asked to be here, so I want you to be as dedicated to this as you can be. And even if those goals surpass what I can offer in this role, I love that you've got forethought. It tells me X, Y, and Z. I love goal driven, and I love a photograph on your
We spoke
resume.
about this last night. I'm not a fan. Dean and Steve are.
I want to know what you look like.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to Facebook you. I'm going to stalk you.
You're going to judge them. Yeah.
Oh, no.
I think I'd still look people up on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever.
Mine only comes from a time where there was one without, and this person was a contender on paper.
Yeah.
And I Facebooked them, and their profile picture was them perhaps doing an illegal substance with a bit of dragon on their shoulder, and I was like, probably not. And then I learnt to me, so
Punching
maybe
cones or something like that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
along those lines.
Yeah.
There was a Coke bottle and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
a hose hanging out of the side of it.
so I was like, perhaps not.
Whoops.
I think that's worth remembering as well, though, that
Cones.
people will look beyond your resume,
sure.
particularly in the private industry.
But, mate, in the government sector, I've been on 1,000 employee panels for different government agencies, and yes, you've got a official process, official tender document. We've been talking about that lately. That you've got to go through, but you'll look up things and go, no, I've seen this guy's clearly unhinged. Let's
When
tweak the
your
results.
Facebook profile, says, another sicko today, like all that dumb kind of stuff will come back to bite you. Yeah. And if you've blatantly missed someone as a reference, but there's a personal connection to someone in your past, they're probably going to get asked about you.
And I mean, here's another one, right? If you've worked for me for 5 years and then you go for a job with Dean, but you list your previous employer as your referee, that's going to stand out like dog sports. And you go, well, why haven't they listed Ryan? You might say, hey, I've had people do this to me before as well. They've said, hey, I'm working for Craig. I don't want him to know that I've applied for this job. That's why I haven't listed him. I like that. I can understand that. So again, there's nuances to it, right? Yeah. Hopefully, some people take some little cherries out of that. And fool us next time. How do you go about training a mouth open for dental inspections? Hit me. What's some of your favourite ways?
For a lace monitor,
Yeah, sure. Tell me.
Like it.
something they can bite onto.
Yeah, sure. Okay, functional.
Or something that is going to maybe some like small gauged mesh.
Yep.
Smaller gauge mesh, depending on the size of the monitor. But yeah, I think like a top jaw, bottom jaw target, but specific. So, hey, biting it, but
teach a top jaw target as one context.
Yeah.
Concept. Lower mandible target.
Yeah.
And then bring the two together.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah, sick.
Yeah.
Like we used to do with the leopard seals on Californian sea lions too.
Yeah. But with a prop, something's going to help us.
Yep.
Would you be aiming to fade that out, or you just always make it part of it that you've got a structure?
I would make those calls. I think I've never trained it. I would make those calls. I think based on the animal and how it progresses, and do we get there? Is that animal heightened, and does that animal think? Realistically, the only really times they're going to have mouth open is if they're eating. Yeah. So, is that an inbuilt thing that I'm just going to fight nature, or go, hey, if you're doing the act of biting, but on this, and I'm still winning with whatever the reason I need to train this mouth open, I'd probably keep it at that.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of thinking towards training a cockatoo or a parrot or something like that. And
you like those things?
Yes, you do. That's what I was thinking. You'd probably go for that.
And I think you have real success in that same kind of approach if you went, here's, literally the wire on the mesh or something that you can properly hook that top part of your beak to. So they've got something to really focus on and pull down. I think you'd have real success like that, and they would very willingly let you inspect the inside of their mouth, but they've got that kind of something that they can be hanging off. Yeah. I think that'd come very naturally. I'm sure you could absolutely target open a cockatoo's mouth and have a bit of a look in there, but they're probably always going to be kind of hovering a little bit, I'd imagine.
And I think with those taxa as well, I would find it nicer that I have two hands to, if I'm constantly like that, I'm down to one hand. If it's, hey, put your mouth here and your mouth there, great, let me have a look. I can shine a torch. Whatever the reason is you're training in the first place.
Yeah.
I've seen some good ones captured with some animals, like some wombats and some seals and stuff. I've seen people capture it during feeding where the animal's just kind of like a bit amped up, and then it's just like going, come on, feed me. And they've just gone, hang on, click, pay, and then wait them out and then layer in a queue. And it's one of those instances where I've been there with, I've had a leopard seal months and months and months of trying to do the top target, lower target and just not getting it. And even getting to the point I'm prying my bloody fingers in there trying to guide the mouth open. And in the end, Foxy just trained it. And I didn't get it. I failed. But there's been heaps of times with sea lions and fairies and stuff where I've just gone, fuck, I'm going to capture it, because how often they yawn when they're amped up as like a calming mechanism. It is one of those ones where we were talking the other day how we rag on capturing, but in that instance, it's one of those ones I think it's actually sometimes it's pretty handy, and it feels less sketchy than getting your frigging fingers in the mouth of a 300-kilo sea lion to open it up.
For the punters at home, if that's a frustrated seal in that moment and you're clicking and paying that, they're doing an appeasement behaviour or a begging behaviour or something like that, how do you view that going forwards when you're ultimately going to want to use that to inspect inside their mouth and you don't want them in that emotional state?
Yeah, and I think that factors into our breakfast conversation where you don't want to overthink the emotional state in that capturing moment. You acknowledge, okay, right, I've paid it while it's in an aroused state, and yes, you might be somehow perpetuating that emotional state, but I always try and remind people, hey, you're not reinforcing emotion, you're reinforcing the behaviour, and the behaviour can drive the emotion. And I think it's important when you're potentially using frustration or emotional state to get a behaviour, that you get a rhythm, you get a cadence, and you get the animal realising, oh, it's the mouth open, it's not me getting the shits that's really important, it's not the aggression, it's just the mouth open. And I think that's where your timing, your reinforcement, and a couple of quick reps in a row just comes in really handy. And I've shaped so much shit out of frustration with animals over the years, and kind of proudly so. I don't care if in a controlled circumstance I've encouraged an animal to get a bit aggressive onto a target, onto an article or whatever, or behind a fence, whatever. It's such a natural behavior. It's so natural to get defensive, to trash things, to bite things. So if I allow a little bit of frustration in there, as long as the animal's not harming itself or harming anyone else, I don't have a drama with that. But then it's about being quick, having good rhythm, having good timing, and then going, hey, man, this isn't actually about you having the shits.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, like if you think about the fur seal, if they're there going, where's my next fish, and they've given you a mouth open, when you've clicked and paid them initially,
you've offset that emotional
well, that's it.
state.
And they're probably, you're almost going to struggle to get it again.
Yeah, you need them to get frustrated, yeah.
I think it's probably important to note too that maybe doing that is probably set aside for some more experienced trainers, because
Thank you for that caveat.
The nuances of that, we say it comes so natural once you've been doing it for so long, that timing and all of those things, because that is going to be the difference of that going tits up or getting the actual behavior that you want.
Fine line between turning that into a behavior that's on cue and just reinforcing a behavior that's perpetually coming at you.
As animals, just getting the shits and going, I'm charging at you. Yeah, I think once you've done thousands of repetitions of training with that species, then you're probably in a better state to start doing capturing. But for a person in their early stages, don't go for capturing. Yeah.
Thinking mouth opens on birds, the other end of the scale, I'm thinking a pelican, and because they're awesome. And there are species that does kind of really sit with their mouth open at various points. So I think that's one where I probably wouldn't even think about using something to hold it. I'd just be targeting top and bottom and getting it open. And inevitably with a pelican at various stages, they are just going to go, oh, now I'm going to get you. Yeah. But it's not that bad.
Yeah, and there maybe one more thing, which I didn't think we were going to go there, but some species, like having our sheep conversation as well, some species, it's not that stressful to manually handle them or restrain. And thanks to Donna Ashburn's advice when I was trying to train a lot of individual behaviors like foot inspections and wing inspections with pelicans, she was like, it's not that hard to train them to accept restraint. And so we, instead of teaching all those things on cue, we taught some of them, but then we also taught them, hey, when I stand like this, it means I want you to come through here, and if you come through here, I'm going to pick you up and restrain you and maybe open your mouth or whatever. And they would sort of go, all right, I see it. Give me a second. I'll psych myself up. Yep, let's get on with the show. And sometimes it's not that bad.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you just need to get the job done, you might go, hey, training this animal to be, more tolerant or resilient with restraint is not such. I do it with all my domestics.
But it's like I don't know, there would be some people not overly comfortable with that. Yeah. To me though, I'm training this restraint. I'm training the animal to go into a crate. Same.
Yeah.
Like the animal is restrained. It's except I'm going to do it manually. Yeah. It's the same process of I'm going to reinforce this. I'm going to counter condition you to be comfortable with X, Y, and Z. It goes down to bloods. We'll talk about it with koalas and go, at the start, the koala may not love being handled. No, at the start, the lion doesn't like the friggin' needle in its ass either, but I'm going to do this because it's going to be better for this animal. I'm going to counter condition it. It is beneficial for its health.
Small approximations within a threshold the animal can handle. Yeah.
Absolutely. It is. There is no difference in training. Like I think Ken Ramirez had and I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure he trained it. The self-netting sea otters. So they would put a net on the ground instead of running around catching them. The otter would run into the net and throw it over itself and be like, "Ready!" I'm like, that is impressive. Same as a good solid manual restraint. Go, hey, come here. We're going to pick you up and do this thing that we need to do to check your feet. 3, 2, 1, go bang.
Yeah, sick.
Yeah. Woo.
I'm gonna hit the